It is the Fantasy Life Show here on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. I'm Adam Ronis along with Gene Clemons here for the next 2 hours, taking you until 3 p.m. Eastern here on a Sunday. Kendall Valenzuela getting the day off, celebrating her anniversary. So we hope that she has a good weekend. But we got a great fill-in. And, Gene, we got a lot to get to. We'll talk a lot of NFL news, quarterback strategy, smash or pass, not what you think. Or maybe it is. We'll find out. But, Gene, trying to stay out of trouble, Gene. You know, sometimes, Kendall's not here, so I could steer us in the wrong direction.
Cast.
Yeah.
You know what happens when Kendall's not here. We just, we do dude stuff. So smash or pass is on the table. Not exactly what people think, but you never know.
Yeah,
Never
so stay tuned for that. So, yeah, it's been a while, Gene. So how you been?
I've been good. Just, working through, off season and everything is starting to heat up now. A lot of teams that would normally be interested, especially I know, especially, when it comes to like New York in that market, they've all been, Knicks crazy over the last, few months. And so now that is finally put to bed, I think a lot of people are coming back to football now. Not that Oklahoma City and Indiana won't be a fun matchup. I think it'll be a great matchup. I just don't know how much the casuals are going to pay attention to that. They'll probably turn their attention back to football. And, that's what we love. That's what we like to do.
Yeah, I'm hoping that people will watch it. I know it's not the two biggest markets, but I think there are two really good teams. Obviously, I'm intrigued. I'll be watching, still paying attention, obviously, to everything going on with football. And it is, June 1st. So this is the time where, if you haven't gotten into best balls, you should now. We have tons of article on fantasylife.com, rankings, ADP. So, this is the time. This is when I start to push it into gear 2 for best balls. I go a little lightly in May, but this is the time to really get going, to see where players are going, start to feel out a plan, deciding on what players you like, who's valued too highly, lowly. Obviously, best ball to redraft, it changes, but this is, to me, where you kind of plant your seeds and you really start to delve in. So it's June 1st, so it's time to get serious at this point.
Yeah, and you have a great idea right now of who possibly might not be available at the beginning of the year because they're coming off of injury. I think that matters, especially in best ball. You want to strike while the iron's hot. Even if you're talking about dynasty, I think it's starting. Dynasty starts to pick up right now as well, and we've got some great dynasty articles and things over there at Fantasy Life as well, because you're starting to see which rookies, just based off of OTAs, are going to have a better opportunity to be effective right now for their teams. That goes a long way for me. Xavier Restrepo is a name people might want to really keep an eye on. I know that, he wasn't drafted high and that the Titans have a lot of other receiving options, but none of them are like all world. And on top of that, the rapport that Restrepo has with Cam Ward is going to be something that no other wide receiver is going to have at this point on that team. And so that would be a name if you're looking for someone kind of like hey, maybe in the back, or if you're talking about dynasty, you want to kind of stash away, that's a name people should definitely keep their eyes on.
Yeah, and that's the other thing to do now, too, is take note of some of these players. They might not have a role to start the season, but we all know injuries are going to occur, and especially if you play in a deep format like with 20 roster spots, and I have many leagues like that. The high-stakes leagues are like that, 20-round drafts. You're going to be looking for these names that could emerge at some point in the season. So it is good idea to take a look at the depth chart now, see some of these players that really aren't being drafted in the typical league, and just keep them on the radar, because they could play a valuable role at some point during the fantasy season. Let's take a look, though, at some of the news that we're seeing. Ricky Pearsall is not participating in the OTAs. He's dealing with a hamstring issue. Obviously, it's early. We said June 1st, but the 49ers, a lot of changes in that receiver core. Deebo Samuel is gone. Brandon Ayuk, speaking of players coming off injury, he's one of them. We saw Pearsall last year deal with getting shot, started late, came onto the field, looked good at times, but a different receiving core here for the 49ers. So are you worried about a hamstring issue now? Is this a big deal? And what are your thoughts on Pearsall for the upcoming season?
Well, I'm definitely worried because we don't have proof of being able to come back from these things effectively. With Pearsall, we like the thing about hamstrings and quad injuries is that you might think it's fully healed, or you might think it's time to, ratchet it back up, and you can do everything right. And just one overreach, one little piece, and all of a sudden, boom, you're right back on the injured list again. That's the reason why you see sprinters shut it down when they have a hamstring injury or injury, or they have a quad injury, or one of those explosion injuries and pulling the elastic band, because one false move, one bad step, one bad day, and you're right back into the process again. And that is normally a 4 to 6 week process when you have any type of tear in your hamstring or in your quad, because there's no way to help it other than to let it rest. And we all know that football players don't really know how to do that very well. And so I am concerned. It just seems to me that San Francisco's always dealing with a skill position injury. So I would say I'm worried if I'm thinking about Pearsall being a guy that I would like to go with. I'm not worried if I'm thinking about the San Francisco 49ers and how they'll deal with it. They just seem to understand how to deal with skill position injuries better than most in the league.
Yeah, look, the 49ers receivers, you see on Underdog, Jawan Jennings at ADP of 65.4, Pearsall 73, Ayuk 82.3. So there's obviously interest there. We know the 49ers are coming off a season where they finished in last place, which means they have a very favorable schedule. So they look like they're in a good bounce back spot. And I think people want a piece of this offense. Are you interested in all three receivers? Does it depend on the price? Does one stand out among the other?
It all depends on the price. I think that a guy like Brandon Ayuk is probably being drafted too late based off the fact that he's coming off of injury, and we don't know if he'll be available week one. I think that for me, he would be an interesting guy to grab and kind of stash away, because you're not going to get the upside of a Brandon Ayuk at that late of a draft position, most likely, depending upon what type of league you're in and how deep it is. I think you can get an Ayuk, but a Pearsall and maybe a Jawan Jennings, who historically have had up and down weeks. They're not as consistent. I think you can find those up and down week guys all over the place. And so I'm not as locked in with those two guys as I am with looking at how Ayuk will progress when we start looking at, him being drafted over the summer.
Yeah, and he's definitely a guy that you're going to be paying attention to throughout the summer to see what his status is, to see if he'll be ready for the start of the season. And that's really going to influence his ADP. Now, usually when you bring up this name, people just moan and groan, especially if you've had him on your fantasy team. That's Kyle
And your
Pitts.
name's Kendall Valenzuela.
Yeah,
right?
That's true. Yeah, for her. I guess it's a good thing she's not here today. Kyle Pitts, they picked up his fifth-year option, but there's been rumors that he could be traded. Now, we know fantasy players are just disgusted with Pitts. He was great in his rookie year. We expected big things coming out of Florida, a fourth pick overall, and the rookie season was good. 68 receptions, 1,026 yards, only one touchdown that year. But it has not gotten better, and part of it is different coaching systems, quarterback play, whatever it is, some injuries as well. But is it to the point now where is this a buying opportunity on Pitts only because of the price? So right now, he's the 17th tight end off the board in Underdog, an ADP of 146.9. Is it to the point where, hey, there's talent there and it could still happen, or are you just so frustrated and you're like, it's not going to happen? Because we do see historically sometimes it does take tight ends a few years to grasp. Even though he had a great rookie year, not everyone is Brock Bowers, Sam Laporta, that it comes on the scene and explodes. So are you still interested in Pitts because of this price?
Well, it's funny because he kind of is Sam Laporta, Brock Bowers. He came onto the league and exploded immediately. And for that, everybody, that's the reason why everyone's so upset at him and what he's been able to do since, is because he hasn't remotely, come close to that. Here's what I'll say. He's a value in the fact that he's being drafted in places that he's already far exceeded. I mean, even if you're just talking about last year, he probably finished, tight end 12, somewhere in the top 15. And so if he's being if he's being drafted outside of the top 15 right now, it's based off of what people think some other guys might do in that situation, but not necessarily off what they've done to this point. Last year, he showed signs of a guy who could have a reemergence. Am I the guy that's willing to pull the trigger on him, knowing that I've been burnt in the past? Maybe not. But if you're somebody that doesn't believe in taking a tight end relatively early in the draft and getting one of those top 5 to top 8 tight ends that are going to give you something close to wide receiver numbers, then Kyle Pitts is a great option to take, in the back end of a draft or the middle back end of a draft where you're looking to add a tight end for a reasonable price, especially if you've got people taking 16 others in front of him or 15 others in front of him. Like why would you not take that chance? And so I think if you're I would draft Kyle Pitts as my second tight end if I had a really good tight end, because I feel like I could get Kyle Pitts super late and just hope that he goes back to being the Kyle Pitts that we all believe he could be when he came into the league, because he's still one of the most athletic dudes in the league. I think him and Isiah likely might be two of the most athletic tight ends in the league, right? So from an athleticism standpoint, you're good. He's going to have a second year in the offense for the first time in a while. That's good. He's going to have rapport with his quarterback for the first time in a while. That's good. I think all things point up for him, but I can't be mad at anybody that's going, no, it doesn't even matter. I don't want anything to do with Kyle Pitts.
Yeah, and there are going to be a lot of people with that sentiment. In a redraft league where I'm taking 2 tight ends, and I only do that if it's 18 rounds or more. If I'm going to draft in the 16 rounds, I'm not taking a second tight end most of the time. I just feel like it's not deep enough. But in leagues with 20 rounds, I will take a second tight end, and I think he's a good one, because in a redraft league, you will watch the first 3 weeks. If it doesn't work out, you can cut him and move on to whatever tight end emerges off the waiver wire. But definitely worth the risk as a second tight end, because, again, all these years he's been going as a tight end 1, and a lot of people have those bad memories, and they're going to want to stay away. Speaking of another tight end, Patrick Mahomes said Travis Kelce feels better than last year. And Kelce, we have seen, has started to fall in drafts. We understand last year, he fell off a little bit. Still had a lot of receptions. His ADP, though, right now is 99.5, an underdog. Is the 7th tight end off the board, which also goes to show you the state of the position. Because, if you look at the underlying numbers last year, Kelce, it wasn't good. And he also benefited from some of the injuries they had at wide receiver. Once Rashee Rice went down, that opened it up for Kelce to get more targets, because that was one of my concerns going into last year. And if you look at the start of the season with Kelce, the first 3 weeks, 4 targets, 3 targets, 5. And then Rice goes down, and Worthy, it took some time for him to get going, and then Kelce started getting peppered with targets. But, he did have 97 catches on the season. That's the reason why he finished so high at the position. Still had 823 yards, only 3 touchdowns, though. But is Kelce someone at this price that you're interested in, or do you think the slow decline is going to continue?
Yeah, I'm definitely interested in him at that price, especially if my strategy, once again, is to not take a tight end early. You can't get beyond the production. And here's another thing to consider. Like, Father Time's undefeated, but Father Time has always been kind to tight ends. Like, that's the one position where, like, we see it, Tony Gonzalez in his final years, still productive, not Tony Gonzalez, but still productive for a tight end. We saw it out of the tight end for the Chargers,
Antonio Gates
still very effective into his later years. It's a bunch of names out there that come to mind. What I think is interesting with Travis Kelce is, when everybody's healthy, how much he's not going to be the focal point of the offense anymore. And so, is he still going to get the requisite number of targets, like you were alluding to, and is he going to come down with them? Because one thing we've also seen is Travis Kelce's missing plays that he used to make in the past, and that's where Father Time has really caught up with him. I think he'll come back focused. They've already talked about him being lighter this year, coming back lighter. And I think that's one of those things that you do when your body hasn't responded to holding the weight. His brother did the same thing for Philadelphia. In his last couple of years, he played at a much lighter weight than I wanted to say he was probably at like 298 at one point in time. When he was finishing up his career with Philadelphia, I'm sure he's got his big brother in his ear telling him, hey, you got to get a little of that weight off of you and be more explosive in that way. I think he'll be motivated to have a good season. But if everybody's healthy, that's a lot of mouths to feed. And Patrick Mahomes, he's the greatest. He's the GOAT. But I don't know if that means that Travis Kelce is going to be able to be the beneficiary like he was 5 years ago when they had all of those mouths to feed.
Yeah, that was my concern last year, and it played out the first few weeks, and then the injuries happened. I was like, oh boy, I'm going to be wrong on Kelce. It's not like he had a great year, but at tight end position, when you get 97 receptions at the tight end position,
it's a lot of
if you're playing at a half-point PPR, yeah, you're going to finish near the top. The lack of touchdowns was a concern, only 3, and we've seen the yards per reception have gone down from 12.2 to 10.6 to 8.5. So the difference is, though, the price. Like, I think last year he was still even going in the 3rd round, maybe 4th, and I was completely out on that. I think if you're talking around pick 100 at this point and you need a tight end with the state of the position, I think at that point, I guess you have to have some interest. James Cook obviously wants a new contract, absent from OTAs. James Cook is an interesting player because I had him on a team last year, and it was great for the touchdowns, but there was a lot of weeks that part of it was blowouts that he just didn't get the production, the touches you wanted. The touchdowns were great, and that was the one thing when I wrote up in my rankings last year, I said, look, if Cook gets the goal line carries and he gets touchdowns, he's going to break out. And that's what happened. He had 18 total touchdowns, including 16 rushing. He only had 4 rushing touchdowns combined his first 2 years. But I don't think people realized how few carries he had. I think if you ask most people how many carries did James Cook have last year off the top of their head, they'll say, 240, 250. He had 207 in 16 games. So your thoughts on Cook? Number one, are you concerned about this missing OTAs, the contract, and the holdout, or you think he'll be there start of the season?
No, I'm concerned because what happens when running backs hold out and they come back right at the beginning of the season? They get injured almost to a man every single time we see it. Saquon Barkley deals with injuries. Taylor over in Indianapolis deals with injuries. We've seen Emmitt Smith misses the first 4 or 5 games, then deals with injuries all season when he's working back from that contract that he held out for. I'm not mad at them because they have to do it because people aren't valuing the running back position like they should. To me, this is more of a shame on you from the Bills. Like, come on, people. Like you've taken away all of these weapons that your quarterback has. Here's the one weapon that you have for him, and now you don't want to pay him. Like, what are we doing? But I think from their standpoint, they're probably thinking, well, how much better is Cook than the replacements? And if that's the case, then yeah, cool. Take that risk. But we've also seen it work out pretty badly for the teams when they try to move on from their main guy without having a legitimate other guy in the tuck in order to be able to put out there. I'm concerned because I think he'll get injured. I'm concerned because I think that the team and the organization will try to curtail what he does so that his value is not as high, because we've seen that happen too. And if you look at what he did in 2024 versus what he did in 2023, the only thing that we have that's better is the touchdowns. And if that's the case, and I know you can't just rely on somebody to be able to get you over the hump in fantasy because they had touchdowns in previous seasons, because all of these seasons work out differently. And James Cook isn't your prototypical goal line carry back. So I'm a little concerned with how it's going to play out in Buffalo for him. But I'll tell you from a football standpoint, I don't see why Buffalo's not getting this thing done yesterday.
Yeah, so it's definitely something to keep an eye on as well, because to me, he's even good in the passing game, and they went with a lot of Ty Johnson, especially in the second half, and we've seen Cook excel in the passing game. When we return, we're going to talk some quarterback strategy. Should you pay up for an elite quarterback? Should you wait? If so, who are the targets? We'll discuss it next. It is Fantasy Life here on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. It is Fantasy Life here on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. Adam Ronis and Gene Clemons here on a Sunday afternoon, taking you until 3 p.m. Eastern, talking some football. Doesn't get better than that. It's starting to get to that time. If you haven't started yet, you need to get over to fantasylife.com. Check out all the articles, dynasty articles, best ball, everything, all the tools. You can check out the ADP, the rankings from our top guys on the site. Again, it's not too early because it will sneak up on you. Time is flying. I mean, it's June 1st, so this is when you lay the groundwork for winning those championships. So make sure you check us out. And wanted to talk some quarterback strategy because everyone kind of handles this differently. And, over the years, people used to always wait on quarterbacks. Now you're starting to see no value on these running quarterbacks anymore. It used to be easy to get those guys later, but everyone's aware of the rushing quarterback. We see those elite guys go high. Last year, if you were fortunate, Jaden Daniels was a value. He was going QB9, QB10 off the board. So that worked out really well, but now he's going in the top 3. So generally, when you are drafting quarterbacks, Gene, what is your strategy? Do you like taking an elite one early?
Yeah, but only because so many people think that they can get an approximation later. I think using the intelligent fantasy managers, hubris against them is the way to go. Because I don't care what anyone tells me, Lamar Jackson and Baker Mayfield are not the same, right? They're not the same in real football. And even though Baker Mayfield might have a phenomenal season, he's probably never going to be the guy who on a week in, week out basis, you have to be concerned that they're going to drop 50 on your head. There's only 3 of those dudes in this, in football. And one of them's named Lamar Jackson and the other one's named Josh Allen. And the third one might be named Jaden Daniels. So it's if you're getting one of those guys, you're assuring yourself the ability to kind of set it and forget it at the quarterback position in your fantasy league. And quite honestly, that's how you win championships.
Yeah, the opposing argument will be, well, the opportunity cost that it takes to select one of those quarterbacks, again, depending on the league. Underdog, they go a little bit later because people take receivers so early. So you're seeing Josh Allen, ADP 34, Lamar Jackson 36, Jaden Daniels 42. You might see them go a little bit higher in home leagues, in leagues with 6 points for a passing touchdown. I know in the NFFC high stakes, sometimes they go early. So just all knowing the competition, the format, who you're going against. But generally, look, it's hard to argue against taking one of those guys because, like you said, it is set it and forget it. Unless they get injured, you're getting elite production from Lamar Jackson the entire year. He might have a down week here or there, but we saw him have his best season passing-wise, 41 touchdowns. So he might not reach that number again, but we know what he gives you on the ground. He actually had the most rushing yards he's had last season since 2020, which might be hard to believe because there was a guy named Derrick Henry in that backfield. Now, he didn't have as many rushing touchdowns, which we figured, but it didn't matter because of what he did in the passing game. So it really just comes down to, what are you passing on? So to me, I'm more open than ever to taking one of those elite quarterbacks. And it comes down to, is there anything on the board that I love at running back or receiver? And if not, then I can take one. The other side of it is, well, you can wait and get someone real late. Now, the key with that is you got to get the guy right because, right? You can say anyone can say what they want with Baker Mayfield last year. No one thought he was going to do that because he was going in the last couple rounds or undrafted. Same with Sam Darnold, right? You could say, yeah, great system, Minnesota, O'Connell, but no one was drafting him in a single quarterback league and weren't even taking him as a backup. So, yeah, you look every year and you're like, well, this guy finished top 10, but most people were not on them. Bo Nix is another example from last year, but again, a rookie that started slow, finished strong. So you know what you're getting. And I guess that's the biggest thing when it comes to that. Now, there's only a handful of those quarterbacks, as you said. So if you miss out, then you have to come up with something. But So for me, again, I'm the type of person where I kind of see how the draft goes. Like, I'll give you an example from a couple years ago. The Fantasy Football World Championships. That's a league that starts 2 running backs, 3 receivers, 2 flex spots, 4 points for a passing touchdown. So everyone waits on quarterbacks there. So I kind of go with the flow. And it got to the point where it was now round 7 and Jalen Hurts was on the board. I'm not passing that up, so I play the board. If everyone else is going to pass on those elite quarterbacks, there comes a point where I'm going to be like, okay, now it's too much value. So for me, I don't have that set strategy. I kind of play the board, and if one of those elite guys falls to me, I'll take them. If not, I'll wait. It also depends on where you're selecting, too. Like, I know last year I kind of got burned in a league because I was picking 10. And I always look, when you're picking 10, I look at, I was picking 9. So I look at teams 10, 11, and 12 before I make my first pick and go, okay. So if 10, 11, and 12 have a quarterback and I don't have mine, I'm likely to pass because I know the probability is they're not going to take a second quarterback. So the one team at Jalen Hurts, they came back and took Jaden Daniels before I could get him. I'm like, what? So sometimes you lose that situation because to me, it makes no sense to have those 2 guys. You can only play one every week. So I lost the probability game. But for me, my strategy is basically I kind of see how the board plays out.
Yeah, I'm going early with the guys that I believe are difference makers. And if one of those guys or if those guys are gone, I'm not reaching. Now I'm going to drop down and see how far back I can get a guy who I believe can work the market inefficiency. I think that guy this year will be Justin Fields. I think Justin Fields coming back into a starting role with a coach that believes in him and is going to let him be who he is, has the opportunity to be that market inefficiency where you can get him late and he gives you early quarterback production because of his rushing upside and the fact that he throws better than people want to give him credit for when he actually has an opportunity to throw.
Yeah, I'm with you on Fields. He right now is the 11th quarterback off the board in underdog 104.5. The bottom line is he's going to run, and he's averaged about 50 rushing yards per game in his career, and I don't need him to be prolific as a passer. I just need him to be, 230, 240, maybe 2 touchdowns on a given week because he's going to run. He can get a rushing touchdown. We've seen it even last year with Pittsburgh. If you go look fantasy-wise in his career, he's always a QB1 when he starts. He just is. And there's some people, obviously, who don't like him, and he does take some bad sacks at times. But from a fantasy perspective, I'm fine with him as my QB1 this year. He's going to be in my top 12 without a doubt.
Yeah, and this isn't college, so he takes some bad sacks, but you're not getting, majorly hit from it. I look at it from this standpoint. It doesn't even necessarily take 200 yards for Justin Fields to be a QB1. It doesn't take 200 yards passing for him. Does he get the ball in the end zone through the air? Does he add one on the ground? Does he get you 50+ yards rushing? He's going to be a QB1, right? Like that's pretty much the formula. 195 yards and 2 touchdowns, 56 yards rushing and a touchdown. He's probably going to be, in that top 12 of quarterbacks. And so, like, for me, if I'm not getting the elite of the elite, that's what I want to be able to rely on something like that. Like I need guarantees when I'm talking about quarterback. Here's the craziest part. Baker Mayfield had a fantastic season last year. Is anybody willing to go and put their money at the window that Baker Mayfield's going to duplicate that season? How many people will go to the window and put their money on Lamar Jackson to duplicate that season versus a Baker Mayfield duplicating that season? I bet if they took odds on it, the odds would be, higher that Lamar or lower that Lamar would and Baker wouldn't, because we've seen them do it on a consistent basis over and over again. And that's the situation with Justin Fields. Every time he gets a chance to start, he puts up numbers that says, I can be a QB1 in fantasy.
Yeah, the thing with Baker Mayfield, and he's still going as the 7th quarterback off the board, which I get. I don't think I can take him there. Now, he's found a home here in Tampa Bay. He will have another offensive coordinator, and I think that's what was the concern last year, and it worked out better than anyone can could anticipate. Now, the touchdown percentage, it was 7.2% last year. His career mark's 5%. It was 4.9% 2 years ago when he had 28 touchdowns. I think we all believe the touchdowns are going to come back. So, yeah, you're paying for a high price tag as QB7 for Baker Mayfield. It's justified, but I don't think I could take him in that spot.
Adam, who's QB? Who's around him? Who are the QBs that right around him?
That go after?
Yeah, either or right before him or right after him.
Burrow and Mahomes go before him. Then it's Kyler Murray, Bo Nix, Caleb Williams, Justin Fields, Brock Purdy.
Yeah. See, are you putting him in the same category as you're putting like Joe Burrow?
Oh no,
like,
you're absolutely taking Burrow over him. It's not even a question.
No, but that's what I'm saying. Like where he's being drafted is saying you think he's going to just be a Joe Burrow, right? Like if he's close enough to where that's or Patrick Mahomes, and maybe he is Patrick Mahomes light at what we've seen out of Patrick Mahomes these past few years. But never forget the Patrick Mahomes that you've gotten in fantasy over these last couple of years. That's considered a down year for Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
And he's still like, that's how good he is. Like these are the Baker Mayfield greatest year ever. And now we're supposed to just allow him to land in the same place as those guys. I don't know. So that's why I'm like, it gives me pause. I love the way he's responded in Tampa Bay. I still think he probably has some of that stuff in him that made me not like him as a person. But as a quarterback, more patience. He's always had that fire. It's great. He'll take off and run when he has it. Great. I just don't know if he's going to be able to put up the level of touchdowns that he's put up in the past. That's going to really hurt him and his position in fantasy.
Yeah, he's probably more of a 30 touchdown guy, and maybe the yards even 4,200, somewhere in that area. So based on his ADP, I'm going to wait and take a quarterback a couple rounds later. Again, I don't think there's anything wrong with him, but we know that he's definitely coming off a career year, and the numbers will go down a little bit. I think people also, obviously like the offense. Ton of weapons there at the wide receiver position. So I think that's why. When we return, it's time for Smash or Pass. We'll let you know what that means next here on Fantasy Life, SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. Okay, fantasy football fans. Sure, the NFL season may be long over, but next season's action is already well underway. We're talking big trades, new signings, draft order shuffles, you name it. And all this preseason NFL action is easier to enjoy with the official beer of the NFL. So get Bud Light delivered today and enjoy every season projection, every player trade, every coaching change, and draft pick with the clean, crisp taste of Bud Light, the official beer of the NFL. Stock up now for the offseason and enjoy Bud Light. Easy to drink, easy to enjoy. It is Fantasy Life here on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. Adam Ronis and Gene Clemons here, Sunday afternoon. Now we're going to do something called Smash or Pass. Not what you think, or is it? Well, anyway, so I'm going to give you a player in the NFL, Gene, and you're going to tell me, are you going to smash the button to draft when you're on the clock, or are you going to pass? So the first up is Christian McCaffrey. We know he's coming off a season littered with injuries. He was the consensus #1 overall pick in most drafts. People thought he was fine going into the season. The Monday night game, first game of the year, he didn't play. And obviously, it was worse than we thought. And anyone who had McCaffrey last year was very disappointed. And we've started to see McCaffrey move up draft boards. He was going in the second round. Now he's a late first round pick. We've been hearing positive reports that he's healthy. His underdog ADP right now is 10.5. So you're talking a late first round pick for McCaffrey, who we know when he's healthy puts up elite numbers, but he is coming off a few injuries and was limited last year to only 4 games. So when McCaffrey is on the board, late first round, are you going to smash or pass?
Well, first off, let me just say there are 2 people who did not fall for the Christian McCaffrey sauce last year, and it is on this radio station right now.
Oh, yeah. I did not take him.
We both were hella skeptical about him and the fact that nobody was saying anything, and then he was just supposed to be healthy. Notice this year, everybody's talking. everybody's saying, oh, he's good and he looks great and blah, blah, blah. History tells us that there's going to that the season after the disastrous I've been hurt all year season, he has a bounce back year. What's also helping him is that he's probably going to have a very light receiving core coming into the season. I don't think that he's going to have the full complement of receivers. That's going to make them lean into the running game even more. So from that standpoint, if I'm on the clock late in the first round, smash. I'm smashing right there. I need to have him on my team because I don't want to have the opportunity to draft him late in the first round or early in the second round and pass on him because I want to see if he'll drop to the third or the late second, right? Like, so I don't want to play any games. If he's there, based off what I've seen, smash.
Yeah, I think a lot of people feel that way right now. I'm still kind of torn. I still have a little bit of concern. I mean, he is going to be 28 June 7th. So age is still fine. And he is coming off a season where he was barely utilized. And the fact that they're saying he's healthy now is a good sign. He still has only played double-digit games 2 times since 2019. But I understand the offense that he's in, the way they utilize him. He has the ability to finish as the RB1. So late first round, that's tough for me.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's tough.
Are you passing?
All right, I'm going to go pass for now, but I reserve the right to change my mind. But
all right.
But what you're saying is correct. That's why I'm still a little worried about the injury, and he is getting older, as he approaches 30. And again, he's just too much missed time throughout his career. So I would have preferred second round where he was going maybe a few weeks ago or early. Now we're talking late first round. Let's see. So yeah, Ashton Genty goes before him. I would take Genty over him.
Yeah, I mean, well, you just have to remember he's the Corvette, right? Like everybody, you can't compare these backs because these backs are different types of engines, different types of cars. The Corvette or the McLaren, it's going to break down. You're going to have to put it in the shop. Like that's just a part of being able to go that fast, be that explosive. The 78 deuce and a quarter, the Derrick Henrys, they don't break down. They just run, right? They just run and they run you over. So those are different types of guys. And so I'm not surprised. You can't be what he is and be healthy for an entire career. I don't think that that's even possible anymore. So I've got to be able to run him when I get a chance to run him. And I think now this year, 2025 is the time to run him.
All right, next up is quarterback for the Lions, Jared Goff. He is going basically as the 13th quarterback off the board right now in underdog drafts, going earlier in some other formats. But when it comes to Jared Goff, smash or pass?
Ooh, he's piloting a luxury liner. Like he's the captain of a really good ship. And because the ship is so good, I'm going to pass. I know that he's been performing really well in fantasy over the last few years. And so it's an apprehensive pass, but it's a pass. I just like teams that have multiple backs that both have an opportunity to be 1,000-yard rushers. My quarterback doesn't really bring anything to the table as a rusher. I'm usually going to pass on those types of quarterbacks. So it's nothing against how Jared Goff has played in real football, but in fantasy, I just don't know if I want to roll the dice with him to be my QB1 in that type of situation.
I agree with you. I'm passing as well for a multitude of reasons. He had a career best 37 touchdowns on a 6.9% touchdown rate. His career mark is 4.8%. So he's not going to run. So if he comes back down and gives you 30 touchdowns, 29, which he gave you the 2 previous years, that's just not a difference maker. His pass attempts too went down last year from 605 to 539. Obviously they were in control a lot of games, ran the ball a lot, and they will with those 2 backs. He's just not a difference maker. I mean, there's so many other quarterbacks I'd rather take over him. He's kind of that safe, steady when you look over the whole season numbers, but it was also boosted by I think a 5 or 6 touchdown game late. But if he goes back to what he did the previous 2 years, it's nothing special. You talked about earlier how you want a quarterback that's a difference maker. That's not Jared Goff. Fine for the NFL, solid for the Lions, but fantasy, definitely not a difference. We'll continue Smash or Pass when we return. It is Fantasy Life here on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. Fantasy Life, Adam Ronis and Gene Clemons here as Gene fills in for Kendall Valenzuela, enjoying her 1-year anniversary. So we hope she's having a good time. She'll be back next week, I think. If not, Gene, we'll let you know. You could come back and we can do the whole show, Smash or Pass.
Absolutely. We'll just keep it going through the summer until we're all back together on Sunday mornings again.
Exactly. So next up for Smash or Pass, where I'm asking Gene if this player's on the clock, is he going to smash the draft button or pass? And that is Chase Brown of the Bengals. I think there was some concern with the Bengals add a running back, draft one. They didn't. We saw Chase Brown last year. It took a while, but when he got the opportunity, he was great. So Chase Brown, if he is on the clock, are you smashing or passing?
So I think with Chase Brown, it would matter when he's on the clock, right?
His ADP on Underdog right now is 29.3. Keep in mind, running backs go a lot lower there. So I think in a redraft league, you might be talking late second round.
Late second round?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, late second round, I'm going to have to pass. I'm going to pass, and I'm going to pass respectfully. And that's because I think that he plays on a team that's going to rely on the people that they paid, the gross national product of a small country. They're going to rely on the quarterback and the receivers to do the job. They're going to rely on him as a pass receiver a little bit. What they're probably not going to rely on him to do is to be a guy to carry the mail. And so, as much as I think he's going to have a decent season, I don't know if he's going to have a season where I'm taking him over a possible other wide receiver or maybe even a tight end that I'm thinking about taking at a higher level at that point.
Yeah, I'm a little more interested in you. A lot comes down to what I start with. If I start with a running back, the likelihood is I'm not coming back with a second RB. I usually don't start my draft RB. There are definitely instances where it can happen, but I'm encouraged with Chase Brown only because they didn't really add anything to this backfield. Now, he wasn't very efficient, but he got massive volume. I'm sure they want to dial it back a little bit. He did stay healthy, got hurt that last game or second to last game of the regular season. But if he's going to get that volume again in this offense where the defense is really bad, they're going to be involved in shootouts once again. So I'm a little bit more open to Chase Brown.
You think that shootouts scream give the ball to the running back, or do you think shootouts scream throw the ball all over the place?
They'll be thrown, but Chase Brown's going to be involved. We saw many games last year with 3, 4, 5 receptions, especially if they're playing hurry up. So I just think the volume's going to be there. He wasn't very efficient though. That was the one thing. So he is relying on the volume and obviously some of those touchdowns. Ladd McConkey for the Chargers, obviously coming off a great rookie year. Another team that didn't add a lot. 82 receptions, 1,149 yards, 7 touchdowns as a rookie last year. Smash or pass Ladd McConkey?
Triple smash Ladd McConkey. You know why? Because they did add stuff. They added running backs, right? That's what they added. They added running backs. They didn't mess with the wide receivers, which means that Ladd McConkey is going to have his, whatever he wants as a receiver. They're going to use him in the slot. They're going to use him outside. Triple smash Ladd McConkey. If you're not trying to get Ladd McConkey on your team, you're not trying to win fantasy.
Yeah, and it is a hefty price tag to pay, but you can understand why. He is the 11th receiver off the board in Underdog. 18.3 is ADP. Again, he'll go a little bit later in redrafts. Let's sneak a quick one in here. Deebo Samuel, smash or pass?
Pass.
I am with you, man. I'm concerned, even though he's not expensive, but you're talking about a player who's really had one big season in fantasy. And he's older. He's had a lot of injuries. The 49ers obviously utilized them in a different way. So I'm with you. Quickly, what are your reasons for passing?
They're not going to use him like they're a running back who can pass out, who can catch out of the backfield. If they were going to use him like that, then I would say grab him up. But if they're going to just use him as a wide receiver, we don't have enough evidence that he can be an elite level wide receiver on a year in, year out basis.
Yeah, and you do have to worry again about him getting older. I know he had pneumonia last year, some other injuries. He's 29. But if you just look at him over the course of his career, we've just seen really one huge season, one 1,000-yard season. So maybe the change of scenery helps, but I'm not going to be drafting him. One more hour to go. Up next, it's the water cooler. Fantasy Life, SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. It is the Fantasy Life Show here on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. 1 hour to go. Adam Ronis and Gene Clemons here. It is time for the water cooler. So we'll look at some of the headlines around the NFL. And Jameson Williams, he's getting a lot of buzz. You're hearing a lot of positive talk coming out of Detroit. Williams, he was the 12th overall pick in 2022. We know it's been up and down. There's been some injuries. There was a suspension. But he's coming off a really good year last year. His first 1,000-yard season with 7 touchdowns. We know the Lions offense can be explosive, put up a lot of points, also a lot of weapons. But your thoughts here on Jameson Williams? Are you buying the hype? Are you interested in him in fantasy for the upcoming season?
Yeah, I'm buying the hype. I think the hype has always been warranted. The talent has always been there. He fills a very specific need, and dare I say, without him, makes that offense a lot more like ordinary, a lot more mortal. That explosive element that he provides that the other receivers don't provide, the ability to not only stretch the field, but just catch the ball short and take off and nobody can catch him. I think those types of guys eventually figure out that sometimes less is more with the speed. And once they figure out how to regulate the governor and use it, utilize it, unleash it when it's necessary, they take their games to a whole nother level. I'm thinking Joey Galloway, back when Joey Galloway was doing his thing, and everything was a 9 route, everything was a go ball. Raheem Ishmael, Rocket Ishmael, when he came into the league, everything was a 9. Then they started figuring out how to really play the position, and once they understood, I don't have to go 100 miles an hour every time because people are already scared that I can go 100 miles an hour. And it's going to open up more opportunities for me to work. So I'm very interested, especially if they're planning on utilizing him more than they've utilized him in the past, and maybe take a little bit of that load, off Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think it'll be better for St. Brown. I think it'll be better for Williams, and I think that offense will flourish because of it.
And the crazy part is last year in points per game in PPR formats, Williams finished 25th. So wow. He was. You're surprised about that, right? Because I was too.
Yeah.
I had him on one team because he was one of those players where I was like, I don't have him anywhere. I want to get him on at least one team, and I did in one of my last drafts. Because, he was cheaper last year, obviously. Because when you look at Detroit, you're like, okay, well, is he going to get enough of target share? And we saw Laporta's target share go down. We know St. Brown's going to get his. Gibbs going to get his. So, 15 games for Williams. He had 91 targets, 58 receptions, 1,001 yards, and 7 touchdowns. So, based on those numbers last year, he was, just outside the wide receiver 2 right there. And that also came with a couple of really down games. He had 2 games of 1. But the way he finished the season strong, his last few weeks, 22.4, 11.4, 9.6, 13, 12.7, 25.3, and 24.7. So in those semifinals and championship games in fantasy football leagues, he really came through. And again, there's so much more ability there. So people might be concerned about the target share or the volume, but I think there's going to be enough where you're going to count on him most weeks. And I would love to get him as my wide receiver 3. And I think you will in redraft leagues. Looking at the underdog number, again, the ADP is 45. You have to have context here. The receivers get pushed up the board a lot in that format. You're looking at ESPN, it's 81.9. Sleeper 62.7, 74.4 in Yahoo. And again, if you want all of these ADPs, just go to fantasylife.com. We have the rankings from our guys as well as the EDPs across those sites. Even FFPC is up there, Dynasty EDP. So make sure you check it out. But I think in redraft leagues, he'll be a little bit cheaper. But I am definitely interested in Williams this year.
Yeah, and I think the thing people have to remember is he's doing more with less, right? So like you don't need him to get 150 targets. You don't need him to make 85 receptions. But if he can get to 70 receptions, if he can get and that might sound like it's not a lot, but just 12 more catches with a gaudy number like 17 yards per reception, that makes a big difference in your totals. And so like the ability to be able to strike when the iron's hot, one of those 12 receptions that he gets is going to be a 50+ yard like touchdown pass. Like that's what things bear out. Those explosive element guys, they're going to hit you if you give them enough opportunities. So I'd love to see him get to a 70, 75 catch season and see what that looks like from a yards perspective. I think touchdowns get a little bit more tricky. I think maybe 7 is probably in his wheelhouse of what he'll do when given the opportunity on a regular basis. But the amount of yards that he could produce with more receptions, especially if you're talking half PPR and PPR leagues, then that's just going to take his value through the roof.
And what you're basically asking is just one more reception per game, which certainly is feasible. They do get him involved a little bit on the ground. Not a lot. He had 11 carries last year, 61 yards, and a rushing touchdown. Do you have any concern about Ben Johnson being gone from this Detroit offense?
I kind of do, but I have more concern because he left, and then the I want to say I think it was the quarterback's coach went with Aaron Glenn to be the offensive coordinator, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm more concerned that they lost 2 guys off of that offensive brain trust than just the one. It would give me pause, but I also have to believe that whomever they're putting in a position, these players are going to help that new offensive coordinator understand how the offense works best. It won't be on that offensive coordinator to kind of figure it out on his own. They have enough guys who are all returning, both running backs, the quarterback, 3 wide receivers, offensive linemen, who have all been in this system now for a few years. They understand how it should look, how it should feel, and I think they'll help that offensive coordinator get up to speed.
Yeah, I would think the same thing too. You have something that has worked, that you just keep it similar because you got a lot of pieces here. And again, the rest of the offense opens it up for Williams as well. You have to worry about St. Brown, Gibbs, Laporta. There's so many weapons there. And you get Williams on that one-on-one, you hit him in stride, forget it. Yeah, he's gone.
It's over. Yeah.
So this is, I think, going to become a big topic here. It's being talked about already, but that's the Colts quarterback competition, because a lot of people I thought probably felt, okay, it's going to be Anthony Richardson, and then they bring in Daniel Jones, and now you're hearing they're kind of alternating during OTAs. What are your thoughts on what the Colts are doing? What should they be doing?
I think the Colts are setting themselves up for a recipe for disaster. At the end of the day, you drafted a project, and I talked about this a lot last year. You drafted a project. You have to be willing to invest in that project and go through the lows in order to get to the highs. It's like they're trying to circumvent the lows to just hit the highs, and that's not how it works. Like these other quarterbacks that came into the league as rookies and caught fire immediately, their profile doesn't fit anything like Anthony Richardson's profile. You're talking about guys who spent 5 and 6 years in college and have played well over 50 games in a college career versus someone who's barely played a season, and in college before he came in, and now in the league has barely played a season, if he's even gotten to a season yet. So like this to me doesn't breed confidence. The whole, well, he needs competition. Well, cool. Give him competition from a guy that people think actually could be better than him, not Daniel Jones, right? Like, let Daniel Jones be what he really should be, which is a really good plus backup if things go wrong. But you bring him in and you start putting these like competition things out there, and I think you could possibly kill the confidence of Anthony Richardson, but you're definitely stunting the growth of Anthony Richardson because you're wasting first team reps on a guy that's going to be your backup when you should be giving them all to Anthony Richardson to help speed up his development and his growth.
It doesn't show a lot of confidence in Richardson either. Like, I don't see how this helps him. You could say, oh, competition brings out the best, but yeah, it's definitely something that fantasy players are concerned about. We're seeing Richardson go as the QB 27 off the board in underdog. So, yeah, there's definitely not a lot of confidence right now, and it's definitely something that we have to pay attention to for the Colts and their skill position players for fantasy this year. And
would you take Anthony Richardson on a flyer like late in the draft, or pick him up off of free agent wire if he doesn't get drafted? Because 28th is like.
Well, so again, in a league, so you're saying, do I know he's the starter going in, or?
Even if you don't know if he's a starter going in, but the fact that he has those athletic gifts that if he is the starter, you know what he's probably going to do. Like, do you take a chance on him, or you were just like, nah, even if I miss out this year, I'll wait and see?
So in most cases, I'm probably not going to take him now, unless, say, I take an elite quarterback like a Lamar Jackson or Jalen Hurts, and I'm in a 20-round draft, and I'm not really worried about my second quarterback, right? Because I'm playing that guy every week. So it's round 19, round 20, and most of the guys are gone. I might take him there. And then the worst case scenario is he's not good the first few weeks. He loses his jobs. I just cut him. The one thing we're looking at his rushing ability, and we know it's there. But that completion percentage has got to get better. I mean, it was 47.7% last year. And you make fair points where he just hasn't really had the time to develop. We saw 4 games in his rookie year, and we saw 11 last year, too, where they pulled him out, then put him back. And he was a little bit better when they put him back in. So the rushing yards is really what is tantalizing, right? Because we saw it last year, 499 rushing yards and 6 rushing touchdowns. That's the thing. We need him to give us 55 to 60% as a passer. Just be at least a threat. And the thing is, too, we see open receivers and he's like missing them. So yeah, it's something probably right now where no, I wouldn't.
How about Superflex?
And I was going to just bring that up. As my third quarterback, I probably would. So for me, my Superflex strategy is a little bit different than others. Again, I'm playing the board. And when I play in these Superflex leagues, a lot of people take their third quarterback pretty early. So I can't do that. But last year I did. It was before J.J. McCarthy got hurt, and it was round 15, and I took Sam Darnold. And it saved me because my second quarterback was Will Levis. Yeah. So I caught a huge break there. I'm not going to lie. It's not like I thought Darnold was going to put the numbers up. It was just, well, he could win the job because McCarthy wasn't hurt yet. I'll take a chance on Darnold in that offense. It obviously panned out well for me. But what I typically do in a Superflex league is I like to take one elite quarterback early. It depends where I draft. So like last year, I took an early quarterback and then I wait. And I try to find that player that could, like 2 years ago when I won, it was Jordan Love. I got fortunate. He had a big year. So it's just finding that right guy, but it can backfire. But if I do have that ability to take that third quarterback, Richardson, yeah, I would definitely put him on the radar there because, again, what he can do on the ground. And in case he does improve and maybe the competition from Jones does spur him, or maybe his work ethic gets better too, and he puts more time in and just improves. Again, we just need, for fantasy purposes, we just need slight improvement as a passer. Just get that accuracy to 55, 60%.
Yeah, I think that's really what it comes down to. Take the layups. That's all. That's really what I want to see him take the next step. I tell my quarterbacks all the time in high school football when I'm training them, don't be afraid to take the layups. Take the layups. Take the layups. All it's going to do is build confidence in the receivers with you. Now they're going to make a play on a ball that they may not have made before because you've been feeding them the layups, and now they get their confidence up, and you get free chunks of yards, right? These freebie yards that we haven't seen him make on a consistent basis that we watch Joe Flacco come in and immediately start taking advantage of. If he can get there, and I think he can, but if he can get there, then that's going to make a big difference in his value in fantasy.
Yeah, it's definitely something we're keeping an eye on. That's going to be one of the big storylines in the preseason. Let's take a look at Isiah Pacheco. Andy Reid said he looks tremendous. We all know the story. He got hurt last year, had the fractured leg, came back. He clearly was not the same player. I really liked Pacheco going into last year. I thought he was going to have a big year. He's talked about adding weight to, stand up to the physical toll that it's taken. But the reports are he looks good, put on some pounds. And they didn't do a lot in that backfield. Elijah Mitchell's there, Kareem Hunt's still there, but Kareem Hunt was just not efficient last year at all. He did what they needed, but from a fantasy perspective, there were no explosive runs. I don't think he had a run of over 20 rushing yards, but is Pacheco someone you're interested in? Maybe he could bounce back if he's healthy?
Yeah, I think Pacheco definitely has the opportunity to kind of come back and be better than he was, because I think he realized that he wasn't 100%. And I think that allowed him to go into this offseason a lot more humble and probably work on his body and make sure that he's his as physically fit as he can be. In circles that I roll in, we call a guy like Isiah Pacheco a crash test dummy, because he is going to run full speed into people. That's not always the best for longevity with the running back. So people have to be careful that Isiah Pacheco may not have just run out his body. Like, he just doesn't have that same ability to continue to crash into people and get up and be successful. Here's another thing, though. It's not going to matter if they don't improve that offensive line. When they had to play the musical chairs and started moving guards to tackle, it almost killed their interior run game. Now they've lost that guard completely. He's in Chicago now. So, what are they going to do? How are they replacing those offensive linemen? Are they going to invest in the run game like they seem to have been doing? Or the fact that we're seeing all of these receiving weapons for them, will this be another year where Patrick Mahomes goes for 50 plus passing touchdowns? I'm starting to lean towards that side. I think this might be the year where they turn the ball back over to Patrick Mahomes and go, you throw us through all of this with all of these receivers that you have out here that are weapons. Hollywood Brown and Worthy and Rice and still an old man, but still out there, Kelce, backup tight ends that have an opportunity to do some work. It's going to be really interesting. This could be a year that we see Patrick Mahomes wake up the echoes of those years when he was throwing for 50 touchdowns and making people believe that he's the greatest thing to ever come through football. I would not be surprised, and that's going to hurt the running game because Pacheco has competition there now, where he didn't really have any competition there over the last couple of seasons.
It's interesting you say that about Mahomes, because I think drafters might feel the same way. He's generally the sixth quarterback off the board, which I'm a little surprised, because it felt like people are soured on Mahomes when it comes to fantasy. Because you look at the numbers the last 2 years, 27 touchdowns, 14 picks, 26 touchdowns, 11 picks. But you alluded to it. It was just 2022, 41 touchdowns, 2021, 37 touchdowns. And a big part of it is they just not have had all these receivers healthy at once. Hollywood Brown came back late in the year. Xavier Worthy was a rookie. There were times he looked bad on the field. It took some time for him to really get going. His awareness on the field wasn't great. He turned it on late in the year. Rice was on a great path. I know it was a handful of games. I'm bitter, yes, because I drafted him all over it. And that's the worst part of fantasy, right? You see the first few games, you're like, oh, yeah, I nailed this. And then, oh, he got hurt. So Injury. You don't even get to see the finished product. And maybe he tailed off. But you're right. If we can get all of those guys on the field at once, this could be a scenario where Mahomes does get back to 35, 40 touchdowns. But it feels like people are expecting that based on his ADP. I'm a little surprised. It could be maybe the lack of love for the other quarterbacks around him.
I think he's at his best when he's playing his best Jason Kidd role. right? When he is up tempo, pushing the ball, getting it to the weapons, throwing the alley-oop, which in football terms is the deep ball, right? Like when he's operating in that capacity, he's phenomenal. He's unstoppable. And I just think that they've had a few years of him just trying to be like more of your prototypical manager where, hey, make the spectacular plays when you absolutely have to, but let's just try to mitigate this because our defense has been really good as well. And our running game has been solid. Well, guess what? The defense isn't going to be as good because they're going to continue to lose pieces. The running game is going through some changes. What's going on with that offensive line? It might be time for them to turn it back over to Mahomes. And if so, people may want to jump on that train early as opposed to trying to get on it late.
Yeah, no, I was going to bring up the defense has been so good. And then what happens? The game's late. Oh, we need a winning drive. Mahomes marches them right down the field, gets the touchdown or the field goal. So, yeah, it is definitely something to keep in mind and pay attention to. When we return, we're going to look at some older players coming off great years and what is the level of concern for them. We'll let you know next. It is Fantasy Life here on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. It is Fantasy Life. Adam Ronis, Gene Clemons back together. It's been a while, having a fun time here. Time is flying. Yeah. And right now, yeah, right? It's just, I guess you know what it is. Just like when we hung out, we were at Radio Row, right? You just hang out and you talk, conversation, and it's like smooth and easy. And you're like, oh, wow, an hour and a half passed already. Yeah, no, it definitely goes by when, the conversation's flowing and you're just having a good time. And that's the best part about this, enjoying what you're doing and talking and knowing that we're getting closer and closer to football, which is always great. And I'm telling you, once you start doing a best ball draft, the appetite, man, it starts. Yep. You're just like, all right, another one. And again, that's why people love best ball. It's like, okay, I don't have to manage a team because, yeah, the waiver wire can get tough during the season. Every year I do this, I'm like, yeah, I'll play a little less. And then I turn around, I'm like, oh, I have 12 leagues this year that I have to do free agents. Cool. These Tuesday and Wednesday nights are going to be a lot of fun. As I deal with that now on Sundays for fantasy baseball, I'll be doing that after this show the rest of the night, going through my waiver wire there. But that's the one thing that people love about best ball. And again, depending on price point too, you can do $3, $5, $10, if you're 100, whatever you want. There's different price points, but I always like to get in a bunch of best ball drafts before my redraft just to get in that mindset and get flowing and see where the ADPs are. So it is June 1st, everybody. You definitely have me wanting to do, or not wanting to, going to do a lot more best ball this year than I've done in the past. I've been a slight dabbler in best ball until this year, but I plan on doing a ton of best ball this year before we get to August. Because with redraft, I really do like to be as close to the regular season as I can be in many redraft leagues. It gets more difficult because if you're trying to be in a more expensive redraft league, people want to try to get that stuff done early. But I want as much information as I possibly can have when I'm trying to really win those redraft leagues. And so I definitely want to invest in some more best ball this summer and do a lot more of that. Yeah, there's always the pros and cons to drafting early as opposed to waiting. Usually the high dollar leagues do it right before the season. So I have them spread out. Obviously, the big industry draft, the Scott Fish Bowl, that's usually early July. They have a lot of those drafts in person now and slow drafts. Then I know I got the Flex League the first weekend of August in New York. And then, your home leagues and a couple of the high stakes leagues right before the season as well. So there's benefits of drafting a little bit earlier because especially if you're on some players that you feel, hey, these guys are undervalued. Like 2 years ago for me was Kyron Williams. I drafted him in every league and I was getting him in the double-digit rounds. So that was a benefit. And then we know players are going to be pushed up like crazy, like Rashee Rice last year, right? There was a lot of concern about a potential suspension, and people were off him. And I was like, I'm just going to keep taking him because just reading and looking at people who knew, it sounded like he wasn't going to be suspended. So I said, all right, I'll take the risk. And then as we got closer, people started to realize, oh, he's not going to get suspended. He started to go third, fourth round of high-stakes leagues. But then the other side is, okay, if you draft a player in a few leagues and then he gets hurt and he's out for the year, you lose your pick. So I get it. There's both sides to it. So I do a combination. I do some early, some late. But yeah, it's time to get ready. So let's look at some players now, some older players coming off great seasons, and whether you're concerned or not. So let's start with Derrick Henry. He is 31 years old now, and he's probably an outlier because this guy is insane. 6'2", 250. He's coming off the second most carries of his career, 325. He's coming off the second highest yardage he ever had at 1,921, 16 rushing touchdowns, 5.9 yards per carry, by far his career high. We know he doesn't do much in the passing game. I think almost everyone thought this was the perfect marriage last year, going to Baltimore. Well, there were some who thought he was done. I know I didn't. Kendall didn't. Like, one of the first conversations we had, we love Derrick Henry. It was like Tennessee. They had offensive line issues. It wasn't good offense. You could see this was the perfect marriage. Now, I think you're going to tell me you're not worried at all. You did say Father Time catch up to everyone, but Derrick Henry does seem to be different. And if you read about what he does, too, with his body, his diet, he's really investing a lot in his body. So where do you stand on Derrick Henry? Any concern that he is now 31 years old?
I'm not worried at all.
I figured you were going to say that. I just knew it. I know you.
Yeah. So this is why, because I was on the Derrick Henry train. I was on the running back train in general. I led the charge for the running back resurgence in 2024. And I stand on it and stamp it. I challenge anybody to say that they were ahead of it before me. But here's why. Derrick Henry did not get the brakes run off of him when he was with Alabama. He was in a system where they had multiple NFL caliber backs that were getting carries. That takes some of the mileage off your legs when you go into the league. His first few years in the league, he didn't get like the massive amounts of carries. He was in year 4 before he touched 300.
Yes, correct.
300 attempts, I believe.
Yeah,
before that, it was like 100 and something, 200 and something. And then that 4th year in the league, when he became the league guy, was when he went over 300. He's been preserved pretty well. And what was I talking about before in the previous segment? I said there's a difference between when you've got the Lamborghini and you've got the 78 deuce and a quarter. The 78 deuce can haul. It can go fast. It has to work up to that speed a little bit different, but it holds that speed well and it runs forever. And so when you think about what Derrick Henry is compared to what Christian McCaffrey is, you're going to get different types of injuries. So he's not going to get those tendon, those injuries that flex on him. He's going to get like the structural injuries that are a lot easier to manage, that you come back from easier, that are not as costly as those injuries to like the powertrain, which is what Christian McCaffrey is dealing with. So what happens at 31 is you just have a dude who is running. This also is why it was the perfect marriage, because a guy like Lamar Jackson is the ultimate force multiplier. If he's going to make running backs who should be running back 3 and 4 on other teams look like running back 1s, what was he going to do when you finally got a hold of a running back 1 with him? And that is like you've got a 250-pound back not getting touched until 6 yards down the field. Like that's nutsoid, right? Like that's going to be a rest. So his carries last year, those 325 carries that he had last year, that was a light 325. That was not a stress-filled 325. That was a, hey, let's get Derrick involved in the offense type of 325. And when you have those types of carries, it prolongs your career. Remember with the Titans, those were hard yards because they weren't getting much, especially towards the end, from the passing game and from the quarterback to make it light. Well, in Baltimore, they have a developed passing game. They have a quarterback who is the most like ridiculous in the league. And then you have Derrick Henry. And so because of that, I think it allows him to be able to add several more years onto that career. The only person that would have been better in Baltimore than Derrick Henry was Saquon Barkley. Like Saquon Barkley and Lamar Jackson together would have been the ultimate cheat code. Like you would have never been able to do anything with those two because that's a different level of back from an explosion and the ability to make something out of nothing than what Derrick Henry is. So like this is the best place for Henry to go. It's funny too, because if you switch those backs, I think Derrick Henry is actually a better fit in Philadelphia than Saquon Barkley is. Like, and I think Saquon Barkley would be a better fit in Baltimore than Derrick Henry is, just from like an offensive schematics point. So when you look at those, you say 31, I'm not going to be concerned because of all of the stuff that you said about him taking care of his body and his health and what he, but then just some people are built different and he hasn't had as stressful of a career as a running back as you would see some of these other backs have had.
Yeah, you hit on a lot of great points, and the numbers back it up. Derrick Henry's yards before contact per rush last year, 2.48. The previous 3 years, it was less than a yard. He led the league in yards after contact, 1,137. So you are right. There's a big difference between that back going between the tackles and getting hit 6, 7, 8 times. That's a lot of wear and tear, even though for Derrick Henry, it doesn't matter. He just throws it off like nothing. But the point remains, though, yeah, that was a lot of easy yards. So it doesn't feel right fading Derrick Henry, right? Because there have been a lot of people who have done it, and there were people who did it last year. And boy, that did not feel good if you were going against it.
What year did it pay to fade Derrick Henry? Since he's become a starting running back in the league, it has not bode well to fade Derrick Henry. Even in his year when he tore up his knee, he still had 900 yards and 10 touchdowns.
Yeah, in 8 games. You know what I think it is? I think it's the PPR format where people look at that too much because he's not a big-time pass catcher. And, the argument could be, well, if he doesn't get the touchdowns, well, he gets the touchdowns every single year. It's double-digit touchdowns every year since 2018, and it shouldn't change in this offense. So the only concern you would have is injury. We could say that about every running back. So, yeah, Derrick Henry just seems...
And he's with Lamar Jackson, who doesn't care about getting touchdown runs.
Right, because now he's just throwing 40.
Yeah, finally, he's just going to throw them. Like, I don't care. Go ahead, Derrick Henry. Take these rushing touchdowns. I don't care. Imagine if Lamar Jackson was selfish. That would be crazy to see. If he really did care about all that stuff.
Can they get to the Super Bowl this year?
I think so. I think it's going to matter if they can be consistent. If they can be consistent defensively, and not give up those critical mistakes that allowed teams to beat them last year. I think they can. I think they have all the elements.
Yeah, it's obviously Buffalo and Kansas City in the AFC. It's always the same story every year. So definitely would like to see it for sure in the AFC. Let's look at Mike Evans now. So Mike Evans, ultimate consistency. He'll be 32 during the season. Did get his 1,000 yards last year. I remember that last week. The props on the book and everything. That was hilarious because he did go under his receiving yards prop. It got into the 90s. I was like, yeah, can't do that. But he got us 1,000 yards now. Every year he's been in the league since 2014. Got to 1,004. Now, he did benefit from Chris Godwin being out last year. Any concern? Mike Evans now 32.
Yeah, there's concern. I think that the biggest concern is the lack of separation. You see that in his diminishing yards per completion. Like he just doesn't separate from defenders as much as he used to. And here's the thing that people don't mention enough about Mike Evans because there's really no reason to, but in fantasy it might make a difference. Mike Evans isn't the best pass catcher in the world. Like he doesn't have just those natural pluck it out the sky type of hands. And so without that and without the separation, then it becomes contested rebounds, right? Like that's what he's living off of a lot of times. And if you're not going to force feed him the ball in order to get him his numbers, which they should not have to because they not only have him and Godwin, who should be coming back, and McMillan, who they drafted last year, and then the rookie that they drafted this year, who's like they've got guys everywhere, right? Are they going to invest more in the run game with Bucko Bucky back there taking over as the running back one? Are they going to lean into the running game a little bit more? I think all of these, and as we talked about before, does a guy like Baker Mayfield regress to the mean? And if that's the case, it's all bad for Mike Evans. Like, none of that points to positive for Mike Evans. So it's not even just about the fact that he's a year older. It's all of these different elements that are going to conspire.
Yeah, I'm a little bit concerned as well. Not only that, he did miss some time last year with a hamstring injury, and Chris Godwin was on a ridiculous pace. He was going to tear it up, and he was going to be that leading receiver for Tampa Bay before he went down, and all the wide receiver depth that they have there too. So I think I agree with you in that. I think, for me, he's like right around wide receiver 20 and the 20 to 22 range. So a lot of people might think he's automatic top 15. He is not for me. So I think there is some concern. We'll continue to look at some players that are a little bit older coming off great years. When we return, it is Fantasy Life here on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. Okay, fantasy football fans. Sure, NFL season may be long over, but next season's action is already well underway. We're talking big trades, new signings, draft order shuffles, you name it. And all this preseason NFL action is easier to enjoy with the official beer of the NFL. So get Bud Light delivered today and enjoy every season projection, every player trade, every coaching change, and draft pick with the clean, crisp taste of Bud Light, the official beer of the NFL. Stock up now for the offseason and enjoy Bud Light, easy to drink, easy to enjoy. It is Fantasy Life. Adam Ronis and Gene Clemons. We're looking at some older players coming off good seasons and whether we should be concerned entering the 2025 season. Next up is Davante Adams, who turns 33 in December now with the Rams. It was starting the season last year with Vegas, traded to the Jets. It was a little bit of a slow start there, and then Aaron Rodgers started throwing the ball all the time. And Adams finished strong down the stretch if you held on in fantasy. So overall, the numbers, don't look great, but he made a big impact in that second half of the season. Played 11 games, had 854 yards, 7 touchdowns. On a new team now, though, with the Rams. So what's the level of concern there with Davante Adams?
I'm not as concerned with Davante Adams because I'm wondering who they're going to throw the ball to other than Puka Nacua with the Rams. I think that can Adams be more effective than Cooper Kupp was last season? And I think, because not that Cooper Kupp was relying on it, but it's not as if Davante Adams was ever like a speed merchant. So like his game was predicated on being able to get in and out of breaks. He's got great hands. I don't think any of that stuff has waned. It really does baffle me though, what happened with Cooper Kupp. Like, I don't know if it was just schematics, in the offense and what they were doing and somehow he kind of got phased out of there, or if it was something within Cooper Kupp that didn't allow him to do what he's done in the past. But I think Davante Adams is a great addition to put next to those guys that they have. I think he has a little bit more tools in the bag than maybe Cooper Kupp did. I think he's aging a lot more gracefully than Cooper Kupp is for sure, and so. I think it's good for both he and the Rams. It just depends on how much they're planning to utilize him, whether or not I think he'll be viable on my team. And I think right now it's still a little too early to be able to tell.
Yeah, I agree with the point you had. I think they're different receivers. Adams is, very savvy, good route runner, doesn't rely on the speed. I think Kupp was he couldn't get open. I think a lot of the injuries impacted him because that was a guy they schemed the ball up to no matter what, and they realized, hey, like he's just not getting open. They couldn't get the ball to him. And the one thing too that I really like about Adams and where he's going is this Rams offense is very friendly for fantasy because they basically put the ball in the hands of their main guys. It's going to be Kyren Williams, Puka Nacua, and Davante Adams. They're going to get the bulk of the touches on this team. So Yeah, I think Adams is a solid wide receiver too, and Stafford can still sling it. So yeah, I'm not as concerned either for a guy that is 33. George Kittle, he turns 32 in October. I think I know what you're going to say because you mentioned it earlier. So George Kittle, any concern about him being 32 in October?
No, I don't actually have any concern with Kittle. I actually think it's going to be to his benefit right now. He's a physical guy. He's going to come in physically fit, physically ready to go if he's healthy for as long as he's healthy. They're going to lean into the running game, I believe, because they won't have their full complement of wide receivers, which means that the play action is going to go crazy. And we know that he's at his best when he is putting edge rushers into the sideline, into the bleachers, and then turning around and going, on that over route wide open because everybody thought Christian McCaffrey was getting the ball on that play, and now he's running for 47 yards down the side of the of the field for a touchdown. Like, that's his game, and I think he does it as well as anybody does. They're going to lean on him because he may be one of the more healthy pass catchers that they have out there at the beginning of the year. I believe the workload for him and McCaffrey is going to go up until they can get their full complement of pass catchers back and really up to speed.
Yeah, Kittle is not a bargain this year. Last year he was. I think at times he was going 7th, 8th tight end off the board last year. He is basically the tight end 3 off the board now. So you have to spend a higher draft pick on him. And I would love to see Kittle get 120 targets. It just doesn't happen. Even last year with the injuries, he had 94 targets in 15 games. So it was a little bit higher of a target share. The second highest receiving yards of his career and the second most touchdowns as well. So he did benefit. And, maybe with Debo gone and Ayuk coming off injury, maybe they feature him a little bit more. But either way, he's going to be one of the top tight ends taken off the board. He will not be cheap, and I'm not worried either. You mentioned it earlier. Tight ends, you don't really worry about them in the 30s. It's a different position. Kittle is very physical. He'll probably be banged up, miss a game or two here or there, which he typically does. But he's definitely someone you can count on.
I'm surprised. I'm sorry, real quick. I was saying I'm surprised that he's at tight end 3 with all of those guys out there. But we could talk about that for sure.
Where'd you think he would be?
I would have said probably 6.
Yeah,
if I had to guess,
it's not as good as you think. It's Bowers, McBride, Kittle.
That's what I'm saying. Is like I'm just surprised that he's 3, and then I started looking at the list, and I'm like, Laporta, T.J. Hawkinson, Jonnu Smith. Nope, he's probably where he should be.
Yeah, the state of the position is not great. When we return, we'll wrap it up, looking at some players that are a little bit risky, but is it baked into the ADP? That is next. It is Fantasy Life here on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. It is Fantasy Life. Adam Ronis and Gene Clemons are wrapping it up here on a Sunday afternoon. Make sure you check us out, fantasylife.com. We have content every day. Free newsletter. Sign up for that. Get it in your mailbox every day. I've been referencing the ADPs across different sites. We got that on the site as well. Rankings from several of our top guys on the site. So there's so much content there. So make sure you check it out. Taking a look real quick as we wrap up here, a couple players that, the ADP is low and there's some risk with them. And want to ask and see, Gene, if you're interested in, we start off with Chris Olave, obviously coming off a disappointing year. Saints offense was an issue, injuries with Carr, and then obviously the concussions for Olave. He's currently the 37th receiver off the board in underdog, ADP of 65.1. Is that enough risk baked into that ADP to take a chance on him?
It would be if the concussion thing wasn't such a real issue. I think the quarterback thing is not as big a deal because somebody's got to throw in the ball, but the concussion thing really scares me. Like one hit and he's gone. Like I don't know. That's out for me. If we were doing smash or pass, I'd be passing on him regardless. But just probably for me the concussions thing, I'm a no-go on that.
Yeah, I think at that price, I'm more interested. And he's a guy that I took in a few leagues last year, burned me, but that was a second-round pick. It clearly didn't work out. Definitely questions with the offense. But, again, we're talking about a guy that should be the number 1 target on his team. Pick 37, I think that's I think he should be going a little bit higher. So I'm willing to take a chance at that price for sure. Real quick, how about Jerry Jeudy? I mean, obviously he was great with Jameis Winston. Concern there with the quarterback, or does it matter that he's just going to get so many targets?
Well, if they're going to target him, because it wasn't like he was getting targets before Jameis Winston. So if they're going to actually use him like they utilized him when Winston was there, then yes, like fire it up. And I think they will, especially depending upon who shakes out as quarterback. So yeah, I like it, but only if they're going to use him the way they were using him with Winston. Yeah,
it was a stark contrast because he was basically someone you couldn't play, and then he became basically a league winner. His ADP is 68.3 on Underdog right now. He's the 39th receiver off the board. Again, this was a fun show. Thanks to Gene for filling in for Kendall Valenzuela. I'll be back next Sunday with Kendall. We hope she's back. Stay tuned. Coming up next, Rotoballer Radio from 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern here on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio.